Have you ever asked yourself why you react before you can think? In the first audio, I talked about why the nervous system is the foundation of everything. And now I want to explain something very specific, what a trigger actually is. Because most people think a trigger is the event itself. Something someone says, a message you receive, a tone of voice, a look, a situation. But that's not what a trigger really is. A trigger is simply the start button. It's the moment something in your environment activates something that already lives inside your system. And once you understand this, a lot of self-blame starts to fall away. Let's break this down very simply. Your experience always has layers. What you see on the surface are your thoughts, your reactions, your behavior, your symptoms. That's the part people usually focus on. But underneath that surface level, there are subconscious beliefs, emotional memories, and old patterns. And underneath that, again, at the very bottom, there's usually some kind of core imprint. Often something like, I'm not safe, I'm not enough, I'm alone. Not as a conscious thought, but as a felt sense the system learned a long time ago. So when something happens in the present moment, your system doesn't just respond to now. It responds to everything that moment reminds it of. This is where the brain comes in. Very briefly and very simply, your brain has different parts with different jobs. The front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, is responsible for things like logical thinking, reflection, perspective, and choice. It's also for when you're being creative. And that's the part you use when you say, let me think about this, or I think I'll respond later. But this part of the brain is not in charge when you are triggered. When something feels threatening or emotionally charged, the signal goes somewhere else first. It goes to the limbic system, especially the amygdala and the hippocampus. This is the emotional and memory-based part of the brain. Its job is to scan for danger and compare the present moment to past experiences. It doesn't ask, is this actually dangerous? It asks, have I felt something like this before? And if the answer is yes, it reacts fast, much faster than your thinking brain. And from there, the signal moves down into the brain stem. This is where the survival responses live. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. At this point, your system is no longer interested in nuance or understanding. It's interested in protection. This is why triggers feel so immediate. 1 second you're fine, the next second you're flooded, in danger, in survival. You might raise your voice, or you shut down, you feel like you need to escape. You start explaining or justifying yourself, you show a frozen smile you just cannot stop, or you completely freeze and go blank. And afterwards you think, why did I react like that again? Because by the time your thinking brain comes back online, the reaction has already happened. That's not a character flaw. That's the order in which the brain works. Trigger first, emotion and memory next, survival response after that. Thinking is turned off because a different system is active. The brainstem that is responsible for survival. And this is also why triggers often feel so confusing, because intellectually you might know that what's happening right now is not actually dangerous. There's no bear standing in front of you. There's nobody trying to stab you with a knife. You might know the person in front of you is not attacking you. You might know this conversation will probably be fine. You might know this message doesn't mean what your body thinks it means. And yet, your body reacts anyway. That's because the part of your brain that reacts to triggers does not work with logic. It works with association. It connects the present moment to past experiences and reacts as if they are the same thing. So A raised voice today is not just a raised voice. It's every time your system learned that raised voices were unsafe. A delayed reply is not just a delay. It's every time connection felt uncertain or withdrawn. A look, a sigh, a certain tone. These things bypass thinking completely and go straight into memory and survival. This is also why people often say, I don't understand why this affects me so much. Because a reaction is not coming from your adult mind. It comes from a much older place in the system, a place that learned very early on how to stay safe. And again, this matters. This doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means your system is adapted. It learned patterns, it learned shortcuts, and those shortcuts once served a purpose. The problem is that the nervous system doesn't automatically update itself. It keeps using the same strategies until it learns that something else is possible. This is why triggers repeat, not to punish you, not to sabotage you, but because the system hasn't learned a new response. And this is where you come in. You can train a new response. You can unlearn your old ones and learn new responses. This is also why telling yourself to just calm down in the moment rarely works, because calm lives in the thinking brain, and the thinking brain is temporarily offline. So what actually helps? Interruption. Not mental interruption, physical interruption. Things that signal the nervous system there is no immediate danger. Breathing, stepping away, changing temperature, moving the body, fresh air, clenching and releasing muscles. In short, working with your senses. These tools don't solve the deeper pattern, but they interrupt the survival loop long enough for the prefrontal cortex to come back online. And once that happens, choice becomes possible again. This is a very important point. Regulation tools are not about fixing the trigger. They're about giving your system enough safety to regain access to choice. Only from there does deeper work make sense. Because trying to analyze a trigger while you're still in survival mode is like trying to reason with a smoke alarm. So if you recognize yourself in this, if you've ever felt hijacked by a reaction, if you've ever said something you didn't mean, if you've ever frozen and couldn't speak, if you've ever people-pleased automatically and only realized later, none of that means you're broken. It means your system learned to protect you at some point. The work is not to judge that response. The work is to understand it. And this understanding alone can already change how you relate to yourself. Instead of saying, "What is wrong with me?" you can now start saying to yourself, "Something in me felt unsafe." Just acknowledging it. Just being aware that there is something inside of me that felt unsafe. This is observation. You start to observe it, you become aware of it, and that is the first step out. And that small shift is very powerful because it brings empathy into your system. And empathy is regulating. From here, everything changes. Not because you force change, but because you stop fighting yourself, your own system, your brain, your nervous system. And you've already taken the next step by understanding what's actually happening inside you.